Hello, it's Romanosky from Calgary, Canada. We just finished a video here on an exploration of automobile prices in the 60s and 70s and which vehicles have been proven to be good investments and have beaten inflation and beaten the market. And we have a fantasy of going back in time and being able to buy 250 Ferrari GTOs for $8,000 that are worth $75 million today. Okay, well, I wanted this video to concentrate on new and late model cars and apply the same metrics to it, and which of those cars, which you might find on the showroom floor or at car dealerships, might be expected to appreciate. I'd like to explore that in a little bit more detail. So from my own history, I remember going back to 1990, and the new Mercedes-Benz SL was introduced, the R129. The older 380 and 560 SLs had been in production for 18 years, and this was the brand new model. And in 1990, it was a really big deal. A friend of mine had bought a bunch of Mercedes at the dealer and was offered one of these new Mercedes-Benzes. In Canada, I think it was $120,000. And he came up with the idea that he should get the car and flip it, because there'd be you could get more money for them as used cars than new. So he took his allocation, and that sounded like a pretty fun thing for me to do. And I remember I listed it at the Globe and Mail, I think for $10,000 more than the cost of it. And nobody called, and it didn't go anywhere. But that was the first example I had of somebody trying to buy a new car at a dealership and profit from it. Fast forward 10 years or so, and then eventually I got in the car business, and I was at a Mercedes dealership, and they had the new batch of SL 55s and the 500 horsepower supercharged AMG motors in these cars, and those were a really big deal. There was the regular SLs and the SL 55s that came out in 2003, and there was a huge list for these cars back in those days. At least we just had lists for the car, and we went down them sequentially to see who would take it or not. And I think we must have had 50 people on the list for these cars, and we'd only get maybe 20 or so cars. Okay, so then there was a big secondhand market for these cars, and I remember I did put together a deal on a regular SL, I think for 10,000 over list, and probably should have lost my job for doing that, by the way. I think my boss knew that I did it. He forgave it, which I do appreciate. Anyway, that was that first SL, and then the SL 55s I think were going for 20,000 over list. Also at the time, Ferrari 360s were popular, and those were trading for, from memory, for up to $50,000 over list price to get a new Ferrari 360 Speedster. A little bit before that, the Porsche Twin Turbo was also, the 993 Twin Turbo was also very much in demand, and that coincided with the dot-com booms. There's a lot of money chasing those cars, and I remember those cars were also trading for about $20,000 over list. Okay, that quietened down. I think there's always been a market for over list for the next Ferrari. It quieted down mostly, aside from Ferrari, and then it really picked up again in 2014, 2015, when the classic car market exploded, and vehicles, classic cars, doubled and tripled in value, and then people were looking for the next car that would do that, and they looked to the late model Porsche GT cars. And then those cars were selling for significantly over list, the GT3s and so forth. Okay, so these cars have been, they're relatively rare, expensive cars, and this has been going on for quite some time, and it's created a group of buyers who are fairly affluent and astute, and love the idea of driving these cars and then either selling them for a profit or selling them and not losing any money. Okay, so there's a whole sort of network out there of brokers and buyers who want to get the latest, greatest car, and then either just flip it immediately or drive it for a while and then flip it. And it's really a sport more than anything else, I think. or game. So to see who can get the best car and make money or not lose money on it. Okay, so what can I comment on that now, especially just with COVID winding down, and you know, when you're looking at some of these opportunities that might come up, what might make money and what probably won't. I did an earlier exploration on this when I was at Porsche, and the conclusion that I came to was that the car really had to be numbered, and numbered meaning that a limited quantity and a known quantity of it for it to appreciate. And at that time, I looked at GT3s and GT3 RSs and GT2s and so forth. And the cars that had a limited production run and numbered and had a plaque on the dash, like the 997 GT3 RS 4.0, the 997 GT2 RS, 600 of the 4.0s, 500 of the GT2 RSs. Those cars fit into that category. The 911R, which they made around 1,000 of, again, they were numbered cars. The 918, they made around 1,000 of those too. They were numbered cars. All of those cars seem to, or had at that time, gone up in value beyond their MSRPs. But the regular, if you can call it GT3 regular car that wasn't numbered, the GT3s and GT3 RSs and GT2s, those ones did not. Okay, so that was my findings on that. So unless you had some sort of documentation from the manufacturer stating that only so many of these cars were going to be made and that number was low, then the car might in fact appreciate. If it was just a low production car, specialty car, it would go down in value. And I think past COVID, there will be fewer and fewer cars where that will apply to. So if we go back and look at some of these cars that had feverish demand at the time, and we look at where they are now, most of them haven't done that well. For instance, the first R129 Mercedes 500 SL that I was trying to get $10,000 over list price for. And that car in Canada was $120,000. Well, today it's worth $20,000. Okay, so it's not worth anything. I mean, I think you can pick up tatty examples for under 10 grand now. If we fast forward to the mid 90s and look at the Porsches and the Ferraris, a 993 twin turbo, I mean, it's pretty much held its value. I mean, that car would have been, 150,000 new approximately, and they would have spiked a little bit in 2014 to 2016, maybe up to 200, and they're kind of back down at around the $150,000 range. So that car would have held on to its MSRP, but not appreciated. A Ferrari 355 might have been $200,000 new. And now, and they would have commanded, $20,000 premiums at the time or more, and now they're, well under $100,000 for that. Okay, fast forward to 2003, and we have the first SL 500s and SL 55s. The car that I got $10,000 over list for. In and around 2003 for $140,000 or something like that. Well, that car is probably only worth $30,000 today, and the SL5s aren't worth much more than that. SL55s aren't worth much more than that. They would have been $170,000 in Canada, and they would have been trading for about $20,000 over, so almost $200,000. And those cars are worth maybe 40, probably even less than that. Okay, so that wouldn't have worked out. With the Porsches, nobody seemed to care about GT3s, and we had a tough time selling them, and GT2s as well, all the way up to around 2014, when just after the classic car boom, so we were discounting GT3s and GT2 RSs, and really trying to find a home for even the 997 GT3 4.0 RS, which I think we even gave a discount on the one that we sold, or the two that we sold. Okay. In 2016, there was the GT3 RS, and at that time, at the peak of the classic car market, demand was massive for those cars. I mean, virtually all the cars we got were flipped, and they were at one time going for $100,000 over MSRP, and that car would have been about 230,000 Canadian, and they were being sold, and many were advertised. Just about all of them were advertised for over 300. But now those cars are back under 200, so they wouldn't have depreciated much relative to MSRP. So, you know, in the last 4 years, for instance, they might have only gone from 230 to 200 or something. So still a good buy for that car. But if you paid 300 for one, it's worth that 4 years cost you $100,000. With the 911R, which came soon after it, well, those cars, they were about 250,000 or so, and they would have been quickly advertised, I think, for over $1 million. There was several auction results in the 400 US range for that car, and it looks like they've settled at around 300 US, maybe 350 Canadian or so, which is still almost double the purchase price. So that car, with limited production, has proven to be a good buy. The GT1 or the 991.1 GT3s that in Canada were about 180,000, in the US 140 to 150. Well, they've probably dropped 20%, something like that, $40,000 off list. The 991.2 GT3s, they've if you get a paint to sample or a rare color or a touring model without the wing, those ones are close to MSRP, perhaps even a tiny bit more than MSRP. But if it wasn't special and it was just sort of a regular 2018 GT3, then it's probably trading for about 10% less than MSRP. The GT2 RSs, well, they were a lot more expensive, and they would have been in the 400,000 range. There was an expensive YSAC package on them, and those cars were again being advertised for up to 200,000 over. And in Canada now they're holding MSRP, but in the US, they're $30,000 to $50,000 off that. So for all those cars, looking back on it, there might only be a very small handful of cars which have appreciated, and the rest of the cars have gone down in value, although a lot less than the regular variants. Also, you have to consider that most of them don't have mileage on them either. So if they had 20,000 kilometers a year, they'd probably depreciate the same as anything else. So I hope that adds some color to it as well. What is hot at the moment, may not be in the future, and the opportunities where these cars did sell for MSRP is very, very short and fickle, and you don't get a lot of warning. It's like the cars are trading for $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 over MSRP, and then there's a relatively stable market, and you think the next one you'll be able to sell for that too, and then all of a sudden the market just disappears and you can't sell the cars. So there's little warning with that, and this window to get over MSRP probably only lasts if the supply is really tight and you have the car at the right time of the year, etc. If you go back to this earlier chart that I did, and you were shopping for a car in 1975, for instance, $10,000 would have bought you a Jag E-Type. Well, I mean, it's a gorgeous, beautiful car. Enzo Ferrari called it the most beautiful car in the world. If they only made 20 of them, it would be a $50 million car, but they didn't. They made probably 100,000 of them. At the same time, the $10,000 could have bought you a Ferrari GTO. Well, they only made 37 of those. Well, that car's $75 million now. So I think that if you looked at, one of the first Jag E-types and a Ferrari GTO at around the same time, one might have been, they might have been equally desirable cars, but because one of them they made 100,000 of and one they only made 37 of, well then I mean, there's more to it than that, but the difference in the value today is staggering. Okay, so I mean, maybe that's just common sense with any investment. The first people in there might make some money, but once everybody knows about it, then your chances of making a profit are low. If you wanted to make a steady return on an automobile, you're far better off to go to one of the classics, which have had consistent appreciation over the years, and there's a limited number of them, and they're not making any more of them. Okay, so there's a limited supply, which just isn't the same thing as a new car where they can always make more. Okay, so for an investment, I would be looking at the classic, not just Jaguar, Ferrari, Porsche, and so on, but some of the early Japanese cars as well. A Datsun 240Z just sold on Bring a Trailer for the astronomical price of $310,000 US. I mean, it was a crazy price for that car, but it goes to show you there's still some undervalued cars in the realm of classic cars. But for late model, high performance cars, you'd have to wait till something really special comes out, a numbered car with very limited supply, somehow manage to get one, and then be free to sell it, which would be a tough job. So I think that would be very difficult. Okay, so I hope that helps. Lawrence Romanosky from Calgary, Canada.